Welcome to part one of Create Breakout Hits with Game Thinking, a talk I gave at Agile India 2019. Today, you're going to learn how the 3 pillars of game thinking can help you innovate faster and smarter and deal with the changing world we all find ourselves in. Facebook use is declining, particularly among young people. People aren't sure where they're going to go next, but they're flocking to other alternative networks. Interest in gamification is waning, particularly in the US. User trust has been broken. So many of us are looking around wondering, who can we trust with our data? Who can we trust to help us be who we want to be rather than manipulate us into what they want us to do? Your customers have choices. It's up to you to decide how you're going to engage them. What will you do? Will you use bribes or manipulation? Or will you empower your customers to become who they want to be? I'm Amy Jo Kim. I'm a game designer, entrepreneur, and innovation coach. I'm also an author. I wrote Community Building on the Web and its follow-up, Game Thinking, recently published in 2018, which is about how to innovate smarter and drive deep engagement using design techniques from hit games. I help startups, game studios, and global brands build deep engagement from the ground up. I've worked with many companies that you've heard of, and on a diverse set of innovative worldwide hits that taught me what success looked like up close and personal. eBay, the online marketplace. Ultima Online, the influential, massively multiplayer RPG. Rock Band, the smash worldwide hit multiplayer music game. The Sims, the largest selling PC franchise of all time. Covet Fashion, a hit mobile game that's become an entire franchise. And Happify, the digital mental health app that carved out a new category and has expanded into enterprise. I was on the early design team for those projects, working as a system designer and creative director, and I saw up close and personal how a risky idea can turn into a massive category-defining hit. Those projects broke through and crossed the chasm, and I helped them. But so many others that I worked on weren't as lucky, including my own startup, a venture-backed brain games project. Here we are, just after closing funding, all starry-eyed and filled with entrepreneurial enthusiasm. We poured our creative ideas into our launch game, Photograb, a creative spin on the brain game genre that turns your own photos into a minigame. We released it on Facebook, which was just emerging as a gaming platform. We won some design awards, and we built up a passionate audience of a few thousand fans. And then we totally failed to cross the chasm. We did have an exit. We sold to a larger brain games company, but it wasn't the outcome that we or our investors had hoped for. So I took what I learned from that incredible and painful experience, and also from working with so many teams since then. And I put it into a step-by-step system, a roadmap for finding and accelerating product market fit. The essence of this approach is captured in this beautiful quote by Frank Lloyd Wright. You can use an eraser on the drafting table or a sledgehammer on the construction site. Game thinking is designed to help you get more value out of your drafting table time, to help you leverage these key techniques and use them together to dramatically accelerate your innovation process and skyrocket your success. The first technique is to find and leverage your high-need, hot-core superfans or early adopters. Now, this is all about focusing on a narrow slice of your market, a leading-edge slice of early adopters who really love and get what you're doing. The smartest startup minds on the planet, Paul Buchheit and Sam Altman from Y Combinator, Brian Chesky from Airbnb, Reid Hoffman from Greylock Partners, they all advocate for this same strategy. It boils down to solving a real problem for a narrow niche of people, which can seem counterintuitive when you're going after a big market. But it turns out you got to niche down to grow big. Now, it's not just me and all these great startup minds who are advocating for this. Way back in 1961, EVERETT ROGERS, a scientist at Bell Labs, published Innovation Diffusion theory, which showed how successful innovations move through society. The punchline here is that successful innovations, the ones that actually last, never start with the majority. They start with the early market of passionate early adopters and innovators. 30 years later, Geoffrey Moore, the marketer, wrote Crossing the Chasm about his experience turning the Apple II hobbyist computer into a mainstream hit that spawned Apple Computer. Moore introduced the idea of a chasm between the early adopters and the early majority, and he whole-scale adopted EVERETT ROGERS' model to explain how innovation happens. And he told many great stories about how hard it is once you've captured that beachhead early market to reach early majority, but how important it is. So it turns out who you listen to matters. And if you're listening to the right people, that can make your product. But if you're listening to the wrong people, that can break it. This gaming platform, Siftio, didn't make it across the chasm. They had a brilliant platform, wonderful tech, two extraordinary founders out of MIT, great funders, but they went after a mainstream market when their platform was still innovative and new. My partner and I did many of the launch games for them, and we tested the games and found that parents who had kids with iPads liked the platform, thought it was interesting, had potential, but parents with special need kids, autism, and sensory disorders felt it was a must-have. They wanted to know when they could get their hands on it. They called it a game changer. The company decided to go after the more mainstream market. Now they don't exist anymore. Contrast that with Happify. When Happify started, the team thought they were addressing hard-driving entrepreneurs like themselves. We designed for ourselves. But after testing, we found that the really ripe market was very different than we had thought. And it was hard. It took some real soul searching to decide, can we go after that beachhead market, still believing in the bigger vision? Happify decided, yes, go after that early beachhead. And they now have existed to expand way beyond that. So for you, I want you to think about who your superfans are and realize they are specific to your project. They're not generic gadget geeks. They have to do with who has the highest need right now for what you're building, who you can leverage to help you bring it to life. When we were making Rock Band, we brought in people that knew rhythm action games like Guitar Hero, our earlier game. They were comfortable with alpha. They could really help us test those core systems when our graphics weren't that fancy. Similarly, Will Wright, the brilliant creator of The Sims, brought in simulation enthusiasts in the earliest days of bringing that ideas to life. Not who we thought our eventual market was, but a very early adopter slice that could really help us build out the core game. Mary Lou Song, the first product manager at eBay, had a mailing list of about 100 enthusiastic early sellers who were making a living off the site right in the early days. She used these as an advisory panel to help us understand what should we build, what was important, and even to test some of our earliest interfaces on this narrow slice of our rapidly growing market. Ofer Liedner at Happify led us toward the difficult decision of focusing on stay-at-home parents who had recently left the workforce as our early adopter hot core market. Turned out these people had just the right kind of need and the availability and the motivation to help us bring our ideas to life. So don't fall for the TAM myth. TAM stands for total addressable market. It's important to imagine and size out what your market might be if you're successful. But when you're bringing your ideas to life, you have to find those 1,000 true fans, the 100 first people that will love your product, the 50 first people that'll help you test it. Think about capturing your beachhead market first before trying to reach the majority. Start here, not here. All right. So that's the first key pillar. The second is a compelling mastery path. This is all about making your customers more awesome. The great Kathy Sierra likes to say, upgrade your user, not your product. Make people better at something they want to get better at. This is the heart of the game thinking approach. So a mastery path is about imagining, what is my customer getting better at over time? What do they care about? And how will my design approach change to reach them where they are? During discovery, they're a visitor. They're wondering, what's the value proposition? Is it right for me? Nothing is right for everybody. Making that clear is the most important thing you can do. During onboarding, your job as a product creator is to help your customers start getting value, learn the ropes, know what they need to do next. Really don't let them wonder, just show them how to succeed. Habit building, which you can think of as the day 21 experience, is about what you do after your customers learn the ropes. What pulls them back? What does a session look like? What are they getting better at? What feedback helps them get better at that thing? And then mastery is for not everybody in your customer base, but the people that go deep. What skills have they mastered? What knowledge have they gathered? And how can they leverage that to have an even better and more impactful experience? So creating a compelling mastery path is not just for games. It's for everybody who's building any kind of product experience. And what you want to do is create an experience that is designed to get better as your customers become more skilled. Closely related to this is the third pillar, the pleasurable learning loop. This is where you zoom in on the habit building phase of your customer journey and really build out the mechanics of how you help your customers improve their skill over time. Dan Cook, who is the co-founder of Spry Fox Game and a very experienced cooperative game designer, likes to say, in a loop, you're learning a skill and updating your mental model. That's what leads to player delight. So when you're designing your learning loop, you're going to need to start with an MVP. Your MVP has to have some form of learning loop. So will a fake landing page get you there? Is a fake landing page the right MVP? Well, you now know, because of this 4-stage model, that a fake landing page tests discovery. It tests your marketing message. That's great, but don't let it fool you into thinking you've tested your customer experience. What about an operant conditioning loop, a Skinner box, as is shown here with this diagram, the habit loop from Charles Duhigg's wonderful book, The Power of Habit? Will that solve my problem? Something like gamification, something where I track micro behaviors and reward them and shape the behaviors with specific external rewards. How about that? Turns out that can get you short-term lift in your stats and your metrics, but it'll never drive player delight or long-term engagement, because that approach doesn't have anything to do with building out that mental model that leads to that great experience. For that, you need skill building. That's the missing ingredient. You need, as your core design philosophy, to be making your customers more awesome. That's the thing that's going to get you to long-term engagement from the ground up. And the way you do that is, don't start with your discovery or even your mastery or onboarding. Start with that habit building loop and work it out. Just enough onboarding to get people in. And you want to figure out, what is it that's going to bring people back? What are they going to spend most of their time doing? And how can I create feedback that helps them improve at the thing they're there to improve at? If you can get the basics of that right up front, you are building engagement from the ground up. That's how the hits that I worked on did it. And in part 2 of this series, I'm going to show you how Slack, Kickstarter, and Duolingo use game thinking to build breakout hits. Want to put game thinking to work on your project? Join our 2019 Masterclass this May and make 8 months of progress in 8 weeks with high-quality training, time-saving templates, and live group coaching in your time zone. Don't miss out. Go to gamethinking.io to learn more and sign up for the early bird list.